Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another week of Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson back with you again, and we're going baseball heavy this week with a visit from JOE WHITBREAD and Jim Claggett from the Sylvan Lake Gulls, and then a chat with Brandon Warne, Minnesota Twins writer at Access Twins, and we'll break down the Major League Baseball trade deadline, which included a big deal between the Twins and the Toronto Blue Jays. Really looking forward to both of these conversations. We'll dive into the Western Canadian Baseball League with Joe and Jim. The Sylvan Lake Gulls are the newest entrant into the Western Canadian Baseball League, an expansion team as the WCBL returns to play after not being able to hit the field last year. We'll talk big picture, how the team is being received, and then we'll talk a little bit of baseball and get to know both of them as broadcasters and media types as well. So before we step aside here and go to a quick break before bringing in Joe and Jim, we will remind you that you can find all of our previous episodes of Behind the Mic and all of our other shows here at ASTV Productions by going to our website, astvproductions.com. We simulcast on Facebook. We're live tonight, simulcasting on Facebook, and you can find further updates on Twitter as well. Once again, thanks for spending part of your Friday night with us. We appreciate it, and we will head to another break here and be back on the other side with Joe and Jim from the Sylvan Lake Gulls. And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson back with you, joined now by our first guests this evening. It's JOE WHITBREAD and Jim Claggett from the Sylvan Lake Gulls. Guys, thanks so much for coming in tonight.
Hey, it's great to be here. Welcome for your viewers and listeners to Sylvan Lake. If you haven't been here, we hope to see you one day. WCBL is here. It's strong, and it's the hottest ticket in town.
We have a lot to get into in the next few minutes on that theme. As we mentioned, the Gulls are in their first season in the WCBL, 40-game season this summer, about halfway through now. Joe, you're the PA voice there at Gulls Stadium. And Jim, you're the play-by-play voice of the club, and I'll throw it out to both of you. And you mentioned Sylvan Lake embracing the team. How has that gone in the first month or so of baseball in Sylvan Lake? How is it going over?
It's hard not to call this truly the hottest ticket in Central Alberta. For those of you tuned in from maybe elsewhere and you're not familiar with our area, there's a lot of communities with large populations who participate in other community activities. You'll see people go to Canada Day parades. You'll see people attend farmers markets. They'll drive half an hour and participate with businesses. When the Gulls came to town, Jim, I think we realized that this became truly a hub of activity, certainly baseball and sport, but even more than that, there's a lot of community happening here.
Absolutely. And when you come to the park, Jonathan, there's an absolute buzz from day one. And it's going to continue through the whole season for the Gulls, because this community is so much behind them. 1,002 people out on Tuesday night, 999. We couldn't get over 1,000 the other night or last night, but that's the support. And after the game last night, which the Gulls won 5-3 in an outstanding complete game by everybody, the buzz in the foyer was still very, very palpable. It was just amazing to see and hear.
And I love what you guys were saying about the ballpark being a community gathering place, and that's really what it is in a number of places in the WCBL, with the ball team being the place to be throughout the summer months.
We know the success that the teams, and now two teams, have had in Okotoks. We know what it does for that community, and we know also that communities like Calgary make the trip on weekends and even weeknights to go enjoy Okotoks Dogs baseball. We know it happens in Fort McMurray. We know Medicine Hat. We know the Prospects, which are developing a brand new brand and a new building of their own. We know that the WCBL is so much more than baseball, and we're witnessing that for the very first time in our inaugural season. And I can tell you, these seats behind us are about to fill up in a half an hour, and they will be packed all night long. And it's going to be a real, like Jim says, just an atmosphere that's addictive. And we see hoodies and hats, and they're all over Central Alberta. It's an unbelievable experience, and I know you know that, having been a part of this league for a long time.
Yeah, I basically grew up in the Okotoks Dogs program, and how they've really become Southern Alberta's hub for baseball in the summers, getting between 3,500 and 4,000 fans in a regular year. Jim, you mentioned I believe what have been sellout crowds there in Sylvan Lake so far, up to about 1,000. And I believe it's been kind of ratcheted up throughout the season with construction still ongoing and with the COVID situation changing. But either one of you can speak to it. The plans that Akil Samuel has there for the Gulls and for Gulls Stadium, it's really good right now, but that's only the beginning of it.
Well, Jonathan, one of the things that Akil said last night during the broadcast, he came up to the booth to talk to us, and he said from the very start, when he had permission to have 300 people, and he had over 1,000 people fighting for 300 tickets to get in to see the beginning of this franchise. And now he's got the seating where we can seat up about 880, and then we've got the grass berms. You can probably see one behind us here. I think they can put almost 200 people on that. The plan, the ball just keeps rolling, and it's like a snowball going downhill. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think Okotoks set the bar, and I know Akil says we're going to try and raise that bar.
That's a great goal to have for sure. Let's talk about the baseball a little bit here as we roll along with Joe and Jim from the Sylvan Lake Gulls. The Gulls coming into tonight's game against Lethbridge, 27 games into the 40-game season this year, 13-14, 4 games back of first place. What's been your guys' impression, albeit in a slightly different year with eligibility and player pool, but what's been your impression of WCBL baseball?
I think the first impression I've had is the parity. I didn't actually expect it. As someone coming into the league, expansion, obviously COVID situation, Canadian roster, no U.S. players, these sorts of elements all had to sort of come out in the wash, as it were. But the one thing I've noticed specifically is we really have league parity, depending on a pitcher, depending on the hitters, depending on the lineup of the night. And because we're playing the same teams all the time, the hitters, the pitchers, the fielders, they get a real idea very fast about what works on the field and what works in the roster. And so I've noticed league parity is really great. We're beating teams and then we're getting beat. And so, yeah, you've got a lot of 500 records or just above or just below. But at the same time, for fans, specifically in our market that are experiencing WCBL ball for the very first time, they're witnessing winning streaks, losing streaks, and no one team that's taken over or dominated. And to me, I think that's the best part, selfishly, as an expansion or a brand new franchise.
And a real eye-opener, Jonathan, is the fact that people are seeing this product and understanding that this is very good baseball. Tuesday night, the Okotoks Dogs black team was in town. Matt Grabman, who you might know, topped 94 miles per hour on the radar gun with one of his pitches. And last night, Ty McWillie for the Gulls was just over 91. Evan Wild with the Gulls had a personal best at 89.7. He couldn't get another 0.3 of a mile per hour to get over 90, but he says he's going to do it. So this is the kind of baseball that's being played out there, and people are just entertained to the hilt with the product on the field.
I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was drawing some parallels in my mind between what the Western Canadian Baseball League is to what the Blue Jays are. The Blue Jays might not be on many players' wish list to go there, but you hear all the time, once a player has been there, they tell other people about it, they want to be there, they become the champion for it. And I think you see that with the WCBL being the only summer collegiate league in Canada. And for players that haven't been there, it can kind of be like, well, it's up in Canada, how good can it be? And then they get there and they see the top of the line facilities and the talent that you were talking about, Jim. It's really a hidden gem that needs to get out there a little bit more.
Well, and you're right. We see it in the CFL as well, Jonathan. You make a really good point. I mean, a lot of American players, college professionals, even NFL stars that can't find a roster spot in the NFL, they come, unfortunately, most times begrudgingly to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers or the Calgary Stampeders or the BC Lions, and they think it's a demotion. But when they get here, they realize that it's not a bad place to play in Rough Rider Town or in Toronto or Montreal, and I think you're right. I think the WCBL is a lot like that. Of course, a lot of these players wish they were playing Div 1 or some major AAA or AA ball and some hopefuls for the major leagues, but this is where it starts. This is the grassroots. I liken it a lot to the CHL, the WHL, the QMJHL, and the OHL. That CHL really fosters talent. And when they get here, they realize they're a part of their community. And we're witnessing that right now with the Sylvan Lake Gulls. We've got guys from Ontario, British Columbia, even in the East and on the East Coast. And we're witnessing them coming to a town they knew nothing about, a province they knew nothing about, living with a billet family. And already they've been embraced by a community. And so they give back. So we're not only creating great ball players in the WCBL and here at the Gulls, but we're creating great humans. Because let's face it, these are youngsters that are going on, hopefully, to great baseball careers, but they're going on to be dads and to be uncles and to be grandfathers and to be business and corporate citizens someday, probably like the rest of us. So I'm really proud of what's developing in the WCBL and really, really excited for Graham, Jen, and Akil and the team at the Gulls who are building amazing, amazing community people.
Very well said. Before we let you guys go here in a few minutes, I wanted to go into your stories just a little bit more. Jim, you're a sports writer at Armchair Sports Alberta, podcaster, writer, now play-by-play for the Gulls. Has play-by-play always been a part of your pursuits, or what landed you behind the mic?
Sorry, I wasn't quite sure what you were asking, but I can tell you my background.
Yeah. We got you still. Yeah. Jim's famous. You guys don't know. Jim's famous in these parts in the broadcast community. Thank you. He's a staple in the broadcast community. But yeah, you've got a great background in play-by-play in sports and in news radio as well.
Yeah, I started. I was in broadcasting for 39 years, starting in Dauphin, Manitoba, at CKDM Radio in Dauphin, Manitoba. So I've done radio, I've done television, I've written for newspapers, I write for some golf magazines still, and now doing this is just, it's adding to the resume that I don't need anymore because I'm retired. But this is the best part-time job I've ever had, except the time I worked at a pizza place and I got free pizza. That was really good.
And Joe, you and I have known each other for a little while in an online Twitter type basis. Experience in fan engagement with the Flames and with the Hitmen. What got you into that line of work?
Yeah, I mean, my background is in live entertainment, I like to say. Certainly I do much more than sports, but a lot of people in this area know me from sports. I've been 20 seasons in the Western Hockey League working under the Sutter family. I was a young buck starting out, throwing T-shirts and bags of chips to wonderful fans in a real hockey market. Obviously, the Sutters have such an incredible name in hockey, and they run a wonderful organization. I've worked in the AJHL with the Grand Prairie Storm and the Black Bulls Bulldogs, which are new to the league this year. I've worked for the NHL with the Calgary Flames and the Red Lot. I've been very privileged in my career to work and know, more importantly, develop relationships with incredible people. And that's how you get involved with stuff like this. If anyone's watching this, by the way, and you have aspirations, maybe you have a podcast, a YouTube channel, you're on Twitch or Instagram, you really, truly, it's about who you know. It's not what you know. And it's people like Jim and I that would embrace you in a moment. If you're up to Sylvan Lake, you tweet us, you text us, you DM us, you let us know you're here. We show you around, you meet the right people. You know, people like Jonathan Hodgson and others around these organizations can really help you build your career. And that's how that's how our career is built. And we're so grateful and thankful for these opportunities.
And furthering that and kind of taking it back to the team for a moment, something that I've noticed on the Gulls' online presence from the photos and the videos that come out from your games is the scenes of after your games with the fans taking time for the young kids, signing autographs, taking pictures, really building that bond with your fans and with your community, and kind of tying a bow on what we started the night talking about. That's really important to establishing roots, and that seems to be a big part of your culture.
Did you catch that part? So he's talking about how social media is really bringing fans in that can't make it to a game.
Absolutely. You know, it's a feature that I think every minor league, hockey, football, baseball, soccer, basketball, they should look into it, because you touch so many people with so many stories, and these guys have been open to us to give their stories. Last night, I met the parents and the grandparents of one of our players, Kyle Fralick, and he wouldn't be playing here in Sylvan Lake if this league was back to normal, because he was playing in Moose Jaw and they didn't have a team, obviously. So they said, well, here, give this kid a shot. Well, last night he hit a 2-run homer to tie the game, and then he came in and closed the game, getting the last 3 outs in the top of the 9th. So without that, that's just a great story right there, and people wouldn't have known that if they weren't tuning in.
Awesome stories. All right, you guys have a game to get ready for.
Yeah.
At the top of the hour, taking on the Lethbridge Bulls. Really, really appreciate you guys taking some of your time on a game night and sharing some of your story with us, and sharing about the good things the Gulls have going on. Before I let you go, where can people find the Gulls games, and where can people interact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sylvan Lake Gulls are at Sylvan Lake Gulls on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. I'm personally Joe Whitbread. My name's on the screen there. You can find me on all the channels. That's my name. That's what I do. I really love engaging specifically with people of same interest and of an intelligence level and a positivity level for what they love. So social media for me is a great place for community. So I would love to chat with any of your listeners or viewers. And Jonathan, I can't wait to join you again in a future episode.
And Jim Claggett, and Claggett Jim is my Twitter handle, and then Armchair Sports, the podcast. You get it on buzzsprout.com. And anytime, talk baseball with you, Jonathan. Give me a shout one day, and we'll talk baseball all day long.
We'll do it again very, very soon for sure. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good call tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
We'll be right back on the other side of this quick break with Minnesota Twins writer Brandon Warne here on Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions. And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson along with you. Great visit in our first block with Joe Whitbread and Jim Claggett from the Sylvan Lake Gulls, live from Gulls Stadium in Sylvan Lake as they're in the middle of their inaugural Western Canadian Baseball League season. Great to talk a little WCBL baseball, and we're going to continue the theme here in block number 2 with our next guest, Brandon Warne from Access Twins, covering the Minnesota Twins. And we wanted to bring Brandon on this week because today was a huge day in Major League Baseball with the trade deadline and a big day for the Twins. We'll get into that. But first, Brandon, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, no problem. Always happy to help out.
So before we dive into it, just give us a little bit of your background. I know you've got a background at Fangraphs in analysis, and you've spent some time with The Athletic. Just give us some of your background in sports media.
Sure. So I graduated from University of Northwestern in 2010. And pretty much ever since then, whether it was starting with Baseball Prospectus to Fangraphs to 1500 ESPN to zone coverage to now Access Twins, which is my own venture on Substack and subscription based, but we allow fans to just put their email in. We don't require any paid subscription if people don't want to do that. It's more of like a free will offering. But yeah, so I've been doing Twins coverage in some form or fashion for a bit over a decade, and certainly a lot of things have changed, not only in the game, but with the Twins since then, but it's a whole lot of fun.
Absolutely. And okay, so let's talk a little bit about what went down today. We'll start it on a broader focus first, because that was a remarkable day around Major League Baseball with not only the amount of deals that went down, but the star power that was moving all day long. What was your takeaway and your impression of what happened today at the deadline?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll get quality or we'll get quantity, but we won't get both. And I think we got both in this case. You saw teams addressing needs in a big way. Javier Baez going to the Mets, San Francisco Giants picking up Chris Bryant, and not only the Twins wheeling and dealing here, but the Blue Jays picking up Berrios on the other side of that, which I see a Blue Jays jersey on the wall behind you. I'm sure you got some kind of connection there. So, yeah, and beyond that, I mean, the deadline goes further than just today. Obviously, Twins moving Nelson Cruz was a factor. Yankees picking up Joey Gallo. A lot of things have happened in the last week or so that have kind of left our heads spinning, whether you're talking about just as a Twins person or looking at the global landscape of MLB right now. It's been a wild last 24 hours especially, but really the last 7 days.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Berrios deal, and absolutely, I won't hide it. That's a big deal for myself, lifelong Blue Jays fan, having some connections to the club dating back to when I was a kid, and that's a big deal among Blue Jays fans. Kind of, they've made a couple of signings in the last couple of years with Ryu and with Springer. And those kind of seemed to stop to end the tear down and then start going in the right direction. But this deal was the first deal from a Blue Jays perspective that kind of made it feel like, okay, now rebuild over, winning time. And so, yeah, go ahead.
The nice thing is that Berrios has another year of control. So while technically the Blue Jays are in fourth place right now, obviously they still have a respectable chance to make the postseason. And so it's not about just this one window, because next year the offense is still going to be young. It's still going to be strong. You'd hope that Ryu is still very solid, and Nate Pearson, there'll be some clarity on what kind of pitcher he is and what his role is going to be. And so from there, Berrios picks up one of those spots in the front-ish end of that rotation. But again, that year of control looms large, whereas if they were in the mix for someone like Max Scherzer, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, that changes things drastically. So I think it was the perfect storm for the Twins to find a team that was going to value Berrios in this way, plus have prospects that are close to the big leagues who are also accomplished. And so it allows the Twins to maybe hit the reset button in a sense, but in a way where they should still be able to be a pretty good team next year.
Now, following the rumors and the reports online throughout the day before the deal went through, reports kind of gave the indication that the Twins weren't enthusiastic about trading him. Some reports were saying that they needed to be blown away, and the Blue Jays package. Do you think the Blue Jays package of Martin and Richardson was the tipping point to convince the Twins to let him go?
Yeah, it sure seems like it, because it sounded like the Twins wanted Ronnie Mauricio and Dominic Smith from the Mets. And when I look at the package that the Blue Jays put together, no matter how you view the season Simeon Woods Richardson has had this year, he's still a 20-year-old at Double-A. And so you have to take that into consideration. Also a guy who didn't pitch in any real meaningful games last year. And so, yeah, the walks have been problematic. The home runs have popped up of late. But at the same time, too, again, this is a guy who's 5 years younger than his average contemporary at Double-A. And so there's really nothing to worry about at this point. He's getting his feet wet. He's figuring things out on the fly. And the Twins are very, very happy to have him. When word of the trade broke, he was actually the first name mentioned. And I was a little bit concerned that he was going to be the headliner for a deal with maybe like CJ Van Eyck or someone a little lower on the rung. So to see Austin Martin as the second piece, or in fact the first piece, but the more accomplished piece, was a good sign for the Twins, because there were a lot of teams interested, and Berrios again offered that year of control that cost a lot for teams this year. The Phillies, sent Spencer Howard in a deal for Kyle Gibson, who signed for next year too. So years of control, man, they matter a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Blue Jays fan base has heard a lot about acquiring years of control since about the 2017 season, when the window on the past winning window kind of slammed shut, and the Atkins Shapiro group started to rebuild. And now, as I mentioned, they've kind of switched gears into starting to try to win. And so for the moment, for the rest of this season, Berrios slots somewhere in the top three with the Blue Jays, with Ryu and Ray. For Blue Jays fans that haven't seen Berrios regularly, what kind of pitcher are they getting? What can they expect to see?
So he's a hard worker. He's a guy well respected in the clubhouse, and he is going to give you everything he's got every single night. He's durable. He's the kind of guy that in a good season is going to give you 200 innings and about a strikeout per inning. When he gets into trouble, he gives up homers and, is just a little inconsistent when it comes to locating his pitches because his stuff is that good. His fastball is typically 93, 94, but he'll touch 96 when he's really amped up. The curveball is like a Frisbee. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then he's got a pretty good changeup as well. So he does a lot of things very, very, very well. And he's a terrific fielder on the mound, great athlete. He's just really missing whatever that next step is to be a bona fide ace. And I think, you have to wonder where that might come from because physically he's kind of tapped out as far as size and height and all that stuff based on his age. But also it's not likely that he's going to work any harder than he already has. He's already one of the hardest workers in baseball based on what we see from his off-season workouts on YouTube, which you can check out if you feel like. He's a great teammate. He's a great player, and he's going to be a great fit in Toronto. It's exactly what they need, and it's a good fit for both sides, for them and then for the Twins for what they got back.
So going with the wider scope again here for a minute, we alluded off the top to all the star power that was on the move, and there was certain teams that were going more all in than we've seen in a while, with the giant moves, made by San Francisco right up against the deadline, getting Bryant, the Dodgers, of course, like you mentioned, getting Scherzer and Trey Turner. The Padres were already stacked coming into this, and they supplement it. Was there any other teams in particular outside of the Twins that really caught your interest in what they were doing?
I think the Yankees, because getting Rizzo was obviously a very surprising move. I didn't really expect him to leave Chicago, and Baez moving too was a big deal there. But getting Rizzo and Gallo, I could have seen one or the other, especially now that it puts Luke Voit more or less out of a job. He's maybe he'll DH a little bit because I know Stanton's playing outfield in Miami tonight, but it's a tough spot. I figured they'd just wait for some kind of a rebound from Voit rather than going and getting both of those guys. But again, if you smell blood in the water, and what I like to see too, like I said with the Blue Jays, is this is a team that's in fourth place and probably not going to win the division, and they still went out and did, maybe not a, going all out, but they paid what it would cost to go all out for 2 opportunities at the prize instead of 1 in terms of years of control with Berrios. So it's very unique to see how each team attacked it. I'm very pleased to see how a lot of teams, I think Boston, was probably the least pleased based on how things went. But, a lot of teams did a lot of things to make this October. It's going to be very, very fun for an unaffiliated observer. I'm not rooting for anybody who's going to be in October one way or the other, but I'm expecting some fireworks because it's going to be a lot of fun.
You mentioned Anthony Rizzo being traded by the Cubs, and they absolutely tore it down. Basically, the entire core from the World Series team and their last competitive window is now gone. A lot of fan favorites, a lot of iconic players are gone from the Cubs in one day. How surprising was it to see a team go all out with the rebuild in one day like that?
Yeah, I think it was a matter of just being realistic because, maybe Rizzo comes back on a reasonable deal, but Baez is going to want some kind of bridge deal before his next big contract to show he can get on base. And Chris Bryant's going to get a big contract that the Cubs probably won't want to give him or be able to, depending on who you ask. So being realistic and getting some pieces back, I'm especially interested in the Kimbrel deal because Nick Madrigal, who is hurt right now and is going to miss the rest of the season, is going to slot in at second base for them every day starting next year. And Cody Hoyer, as a reliever, there's a non-zero chance that from this point forward, he outperforms Craig Kimbrel. We all saw who Craig Kimbrel was the first couple years of that deal, and we all know how uneven reliever performance can be. So that's a slam dunk deal for both sides, because if you can have Liam Hendricks and Craig Kimbrel closing games down for you in the back couple innings, you take that any day you can. But at the same time, too, the opportunity was there for the Cubs to make a couple moves, shake a couple pieces loose. Now they can commit to Nico Horner at one spot and Patrick Wisdom at another spot and Ian Happ every day in one spot. And just wherever they want these guys, they have a little more certainty. Some of these guys do well moving around, and Bryant was one of those guys. But there are some guys who are going to want to settle into one spot, and they're going to be able to do that down the stretch and then be able to reevaluate going into 2022. I don't know if I consider it a full rebuild, but at the same time, they really don't have the pitching staff to do much beyond this year without supplementing significantly. So I think it's going to be a bit of a transition period on the north side, but hopefully not as long of one as it was before this whole thing started up.
Now, one factor that might have contributed to the increased action today in the last couple of days was the fact that for a long time, Major League Baseball had the two trade deadlines. They had the waiver deadline and the non-waiver deadline, where at the end of August you could put a player on waivers and then deal him after that. How much do you think the change to one hard, solid deadline, how much did that change the dynamic?
Somewhat. I mean, the other thing, too, is this year's deadline compared to last year's is, it's more substantive. It's a longer stretch to have these players under control going into a postseason that's fewer teams, so it's a little less of a crapshoot in the sense that there's not, I think, 8 teams last year on each side making it. I think, too, there's some question about the CBA, so teams want to push their chips into the middle a little bit. And at the same time, too, I think if you look at the AL and the NL, nobody is really running away with it. I mean, Boston is right now probably the best team in the AL, and I don't think they're infallible by any means. And so far, you would expect the Dodgers to be the best team in the West or in the NL, and they're in second place behind an upstart Giants team that's doing everything right now. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm of what you said, but also CBA questions and some good players being free agents and some teams willing to maybe push their chips into the pot a little bit more. And it made for what felt like the first night of NBA free agency, because everything just was it was breakneck pace for about 2 hours there, especially that last hour was crazy. But in the morning, once it became pretty clear that the Twins were going to move Jose Berrios, I'll just say I was glued to my phone and my screens for pretty much the rest of the day, which is good for me, but probably not good for a marriage or being a father.
And you brought up a good point a moment ago, the fact that the NBA has been making big noise, and up here in Canada, the NHL with their yearly calendar pushed back. Free agency was on Wednesday, so the NHL was making big noise, and baseball stepped up in a big way with this deadline. And backing up from the hardcore analysis, baseball head talk of it, do you think this has got to be good for the sport to have this kind of entertainment value and be able to seize the conversation and the attention like this?
Yeah, it's been sorely lacking for a long time, and it's a matter of finding ways to market these guys. And we say the same things over and over again. We bang the drum nonstop, but how do you find a way to make Mike Trout more interesting than just being in a Subway commercial? How do you make a guy whose English is not his first language and Shohei Ohtani be someone who has broad appeal to the American fan base? It's not as easy as just saying market these guys, and I get that. But at the same time, too, it just seems like a lot of times MLB cuts off its own nose to spite its face in terms of figuring out what makes MLB.TV work for everyone, and not going after people who use GIFs of action on the field 10 seconds at a time. There's got to be a middle ground, and it just does not seem like Rob Manfred and his cronies are that interested in doing it, which is a shame for him, because I wouldn't be surprised if in the CBA negotiations coming up, the Players Association says, listen, we don't want to deal with this guy. It's a matter of, owners will still pick their own. You could call him a stooge if you want. He works for the owners, but I think comes a point where MLB players are fed up with him as the liaison between them and ownership and says, listen, we're not going to negotiate until you replace this guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case this winter.
And I think that's, from my perspective anyway, that's the most frustrating thing about Major League Baseball the last number of years is we can talk about the good things on the field and the entertainment value of something like the deadline today, but then those good things, and then you can throw in the All-Star Game spectacle with Shohei Ohtani, but it seems every step of the way, the last 5 years, it seems, every time there's something good that is purely about the game, the business of Major League Baseball gets in the way. And whether it be it seems like that drama away from the game really takes the spotlight away.
Well, and anything they've done positive now could be rolled back by either tense CBA negotiations or a stoppage, or even a year from now when, let's say, next year's deadline isn't as exciting, which is very possible, if not altogether likely. That's another way that things can go south, and a way that baseball is going to, again, have to compete for attention of people who, may not have usually been watching the NBA Finals and then free agency, or the Stanley Cup Finals and now free agency. Everything's kind of bunched together. And when you're competing for those eyeballs and those ear holes, that's tough. And so this trade deadline delivered, but you're only as good as your next move. And for what we expect that to be from MLB, I don't know if that's something to be excited about or to cringe over.
Yeah, for sure. I want to switch gears a little bit in our last few minutes here before we let you go and talk about your story and your pursuits a little bit more. Off the top, we talked about some of the places that you've worked for, that you've written at, and the one thing you brought up was the fact that you've worked at a number of really good places, but now working at Access Twins, that's your endeavor. So, as somebody who's covered Major League Baseball and the Twins for a few years, how does that change things when you've gone from working for somebody, be it the Athletic or any of the other places, to now doing your own thing?
Yeah, I don't know if without the pandemic I would have had the fortuitousness, so to speak, to go out on my own. But there is a Vikings writer who did so with the Vikings, called Vikings Insider on Substack. And that was kind of all the motivation I needed to say, well, the place I was at before wanted to cut my salary going into the pandemic. And I thought, well, if I'm going to give anybody the time, I may as well do it for myself. I may as well go into business for myself, because at the end of the day, that's who I'm accountable to. And so whatever I put in terms of sweat, I can pull out in terms of equity. And it's been a perfect setup for me. It's been a perfect situation for me. It's going to be a process in terms of pulling eyeballs and, again, ears from the places I've been before. But loyalty is pretty strong in this day and age in terms of content creation. So it's just going to be a matter of getting people to follow me along wherever I go, and then just taking it not too slow, but not too fast. Because if you try to grow too fast, you can kind of get ahead of yourself. But at the same time, too, if you slow down, you start moving backwards, too. So you really have to know yourself and your strengths and your place in the world, in the sports media world. But you also have to know when to take chances or really push things. So it's a different challenge. It's a unique challenge every day, but I'm really enjoying it so far.
So how did you use that time during the meat of the pandemic, with all the sports scene, if not slowing down altogether, stopping for a while there? How did you, as a writer, as a media type, how did you use that time?
I recharged my batteries. I had been going nonstop for probably the better part of 7 or 8 years. And so I just kind of stopped. I didn't edit. I didn't write. I didn't podcast. I didn't do anything. And it was good for me. I got to know, obviously, my family more intimately you go to work every day and you come home and you go to bed. And so you get time during the day, but this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for multiple months. And, I grew in my bond with my wife, and I grew in my bond with my then 3, now 4-year-old daughter, to the point where now I work from home during the day and I get to be with my daughter all day long every day. And so that was good. And then from a sports standpoint, just clearing my mind and getting back to just feeling like I want to create again, as opposed to being obligated to create, because it's a very different vibe when you have something on your mind and you can't wait to write it versus you need to put something out there, but you're just agonizing over how to do it and when to do it. So that was good for me to kind of get a refresher and a breather and just kind of, clear my brain, do a soft reset, and then jump back into it.
So if there's young writers, broadcasters, podcasters, whatever the concentration may be, if there's young people out there that are thinking about getting into sports media and want to do the type of things that you've been able to do, given all that you've learned through your journey thus far, what advice would you give people just starting out or people thinking about starting out?
Do it with your whole heart, and always do it because you never know who's watching. And so fully do everything, because some of the best opportunities I ever had came about because I was doing good work for people who may or may not have been paying me. And I'm not saying you have to sell yourself short, but know what you're doing going into something, give it your full all, give it your full heart. And if nothing else, start a blog, start a podcast, do it yourself, and develop your style, because the only way you can stand out is by learning what you're good at and what your style is going to be. When you stand out, and once you stand out, that's when the talent can rise to the top. So write, talk, whatever you got to do, just work hard.
Great words. Brandon, thanks so much for coming on and spending some time with us here on Behind the Mic. This was one that I was looking forward to, a chance to talk some baseball with a fellow baseball head and cap off what was a fun day for baseball fans. So, Brandon, thanks so much for coming on.
For sure. Anytime. Never hesitate to reach out.
And also, before I let you go, where can people find Access Twins, and where can they find you?
So at Brandon_WARNE on Twitter, accesstwins.substack.com, or look for that 90s baseball pod wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Libsyn, wherever. I think you'll have a lot of fun. If you enjoyed baseball in the 90s, Greg Olson, former MLB reliever, and I take a trip back down memory lane, and it's a lot of fun.
Sounds great. We'll find you there for sure. All right, we're going to say goodbye to Brandon. Take one more break here on Behind the Mic, and I will be back to wrap it up for another week here on BTM. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back to wrap it up on the other side.
Why go solar? Solar is better than ever. Our revolutionary design and inverter equipment with the latest in solar panel technology for the ultimate in-home and business security. That's right, I said security. Grid security and security of your home are linked. Fortify your future today with a battery backup system. No maintenance, quiet running. Did you know in Manitoba, grid-connected, off-grid, and battery backup systems are 100% right off in the year you purchase for any company or farm? Do you want to back up your internet, keep your tills running, and the lights on? We can install a system that is right for you with battery backup fully capable of taking on all those essential loads and keeping you running. When you call our experts at Evolve Green, ask about getting your free energy audit today. Call or email today to find out what system works best for you. 1-866-5EVOLVE or support@evolvegreen.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.evolvegreen.ca.
And welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson along with you to wrap up another show for another week here on BTM. That was a fun one, doing a deep dive into baseball first with JOE WHITBREAD and Jim Claggett from the Sylvan Lake Gulls, the PA voice and the play-by-play broadcaster for the Western Canadian Baseball League team, their first year in Central Alberta in the WCBL, and then a little bit of Major League talk with Brandon Warne, writer for Access Twins, covering the Minnesota Twins after the Blue Jays and Twins swing a big deal at the deadline, sending pitcher Jose Berrios back to the Blue Jays for the stretch drive, and then, of course, signed for next season. So thanks to all three of our guests for coming on. Enjoyed it. Hope you did too. And we'll be back with you next week. And before we sign off, we'll remind you that you can find all of our shows, all of our episodes of Behind the Mic on our website, astvproductions.com. We simulcast every Friday at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern on the website and on ASTV's Facebook page. And you can find further updates on ASTV's Twitter and Instagram pages as well. So we will be back same time, same place next Friday night with another conversation with another great sportscaster. For my guests, Joe, Jim, and Brandon, this is Jonathan Hodgson thanking you for spending part of your Friday night with us wherever you've been tuned in from. Till next week, we'll talk to you later.